just perusing all these faces. It's welcome everyone. Good to see you all. So I follow the same form as we did last week, which I'll give a bit of a talk, and then I'll open it up for any questions or things you want to share or issues you might like to explore. I thought this week I would do a bit of a general Dharma reflections, if you like. So I suppose I'm reflecting on nearly 50 years of inquiry and over 15 years of teaching. And the thing I sort of love about the Buddha Dharma and many of the Indian spiritual traditions is they have a real basis in inquiry, questioning, neti, not this, not this, which is very different to any sort of faith-based belief system. And I think that's what attracted me to it in the first place. And of course, the Kalama Sutta, famous sutta of the Buddha, where he said, well, do not believe anything you read, no matter how holy the book is, or believe what's being said by a teacher, no matter what is, what they're sort of, how famous they are. But really, you need to explore for yourself and find that validation in your own understanding. And those who've been on retreats with me many times will heard me say there's no authority here. That the teachings and the Dharma talks are really to encourage you, to remind you, and hopefully support you in your own inquiry. So this Dharma talk tonight is an inquiry which can be had by all of us, it can be reflected on, and allow what arises for you. So when I look at the heart of the teachings, what is the very core here? And what strikes me is the teaching on the non-clinging. So this is what does this, inquire into this non-clinging? We've heard it so many times. What does this mean? What's the depth of that teaching? Of course, it's not clinging to any view, any opinion, any belief, any story, anything from the past. Not clinging to any identification, any role, any construct, any personality trait, any view I have about who I am or what I'm lacking. So incredible depth here in this teaching on non-clinging. It can incredibly subtle. The other teachings that really strike me are the teachings on not getting and not becoming. Of course, not acquiring, not wanting, not wanting. Yeah. And not becoming, no movement to what I think I should be. No movement to enlightenment or awakening, whatever view or belief I have that I've read somewhere, that there is some state other than what I'm in at this moment, and that's where I like to get to. So the Buddha questioned this whole conditioning about around becoming. So the teachings themselves, and when I say we shouldn't cling to the teachings, but I found the teachings to be incredibly helpful. They've relieved suffering for me. And I've seen the relief of suffering in others. The teachings on the Noble Truths, on causality and dependent arising, and on the impermanence of things. All these have helped lessen the clinging. So have it been important supports, if you like, in the years of practice. But if I'm really inquiring deeply into this whole teaching on non-clinging, not only into the relief from suffering, but as the Buddhists said, the end of suffering. I'm really inquiring into freedom. Then I have to see into the limitations of the teachings, the limitation of inquiry, the limitations of how far the intellect can take me. That acquiring knowledge of the teachings is not seeing into the very heart of freedom. Because freedom cannot be dependent on the teachings. Freedom, by its very nature, has to be outside of, if you like, dependent arising. If my freedom's dependent on my practice or on the teachings, then it's not ultimately free. And if it's dependent on inquiry, on the act of inquiry, of purposely trying to inquire, then there's a limitation on that. And I wonder if, can we have the insight, or the depth of insight, if you like, a depth of insight into the movement of the mind. And so that insight stops the very movement. Can inquiry come to this point, if you like, of stillness, where it sees there has nowhere to go? Going anywhere is more becoming, is more movement. Can we sit in that stillness? Can we see this? Not see in the visual sense, if you like, seeing with the totality of being, seeing without the seer, with the subject and object, just sitting with that sense of not knowing and not being able to conceive or find the answer or get anywhere. Because we can sense that any movement of mind is a movement away from that stillness. So we're not able to move. We're stationary, if you like. The mind is very quiet and very still. And it's become very still because it's realized there's nowhere to move, nowhere to go. And what happens in that stillness? There's some sense of otherness. It's hard to put this into words. It's a sense of grace, if you like, but it's not coming from outside. It's coming from the very depths of the stillness. This is the heart of inquiry. And the flavour of that, incredible tenderness and compassion. There's an incredible sweetness to it. Then we can respond from there. Yeah. And we might say, well, but it's good to have those insights. But in the busy day to day, that stillness is sort of not available. But there's a flavour, there's a perfume, if you like, of that stillness can run through our lives. And it expresses itself through understanding. It has an intelligence about it. It's come out of that sense of being very, very still. And the understanding then of not being caught up, of not clinging, of not making that movement to becoming. We've tasted the stillness. So that informs our life. So I think this is at the very heart of not only Dharma practice, but spiritual practice. Can we taste that stillness? That incredible release without having to go anywhere, get anywhere, achieve anything, know anything. Being incredibly intimate with the direct experience. Just this moment, sitting, listening. Can we sense a spaciousness there, a freeing up of the consciousness? Not being caught or fixated in any way. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Lisa.